gonna talk about my uncle Jose Garcia, who experienced the fears and all the horrible things that happen in the border between Mexico and the USA. Okay, so here's a little story. I hope it helps to reflect people that have Mexican parents and all that stuff. So okay, it was one day at 2 a.m. in the afternoon. He was like decide to come here to the USA because they were having like problems with money and all that stuff. Because over there in Mexico, it's like it's a really hard place to live if you don't have money. So he was 17 years old. He had a daughter already. So he couldn't handle all the bills and all that stuff by himself. So he said, you know what? I'm gonna go fight for a new life for them. I'm gonna go look for my future and for the future of my family. So he traveled all the way to Juarez, where he meet other people and the coyote, the one who's gonna make them pass to the USA, show him how to pass and what they have to do. So he go all the way over there, and he said like, okay, you guys gonna follow me, and I'm gonna take you guys to a car, and then we're gonna drive all the way to half of like going to the border, the from Chihuahua. So they went all the way over there driving in the car. Then once they get there, they start walking. They walk for around 2 weeks or so. Then they stop in a house. So in the house they stayed like for 2 months or something, waiting for someone to give them the signal, because they were expecting a signal to go and start running to cross the Rio Bravo. So my uncle said that it was like around 50 something people in one room. It was like a lot of people. So they couldn't get privacy and all that stuff. So they only eat once per day. So like I don't know, like 8 a.m. they eat, and they don't eat in the whole day. The rest of the day they don't eat anymore. So they couldn't have privacy. They couldn't take showers by themselves because it was a lot of people, and they couldn't get out of the room or something like that because the migra was around every day. So they don't want that to happen to take them back to Mexico. So that day come, it was 3 a.m. He said he remembered that everything was dark that day. So the guy who was traveling them to here to the USA, the coyote, told him to, it's time. So they get out like pretty fast, and they went walking to the Rio Bravo. But they start hearing like the alarms, all that stuff from the migra, and there was a stop. So they start running like so fast, and my uncle said that the Rio moved like really fast, so he was pulling the people, and he takes like a few lives, and then the migra like start shooting because they didn't stop. So in that moment, my uncle said that it's now or never. If I stop running, my life, my daughters, and my wife, it's in fire. So he said like everything turns black. He couldn't see which way to run. He was just hearing everything. He was paralyzed. So my auntie grabbed his hand and said, you know what? We come so far. We can stop right here. So they start running. My uncle was carrying my little cousin. So they start running all the way until they get to another motel. They run like for 5 hours or so. They were like really scared. Only like 10 or 12 people survived, or at least didn't go back to Mexico. So the ones who survived, like they went to a train station. It's called La Bestia. That takes them all the way over here, almost to the front door of the USA. So they passed to like, it was like some halls that drive you in. Like they start walking down there. So they get out from down the bridge. They get out, and so once they get to the USA, like they start like smelling different, start thinking different, start thinking that they made it, and all those bad things they have to suffer, because it was like really rough to see people die. And once they get here, the first thing they did is went to McDonald's. They buy 3 burgers and they eat. And my uncle said, like, we made it. I know that other people couldn't, but I'm here and I'm gonna change the life for me and for my family.
So I interviewed my dad, and he was born in Mexico City, and he grew up all like there throughout his whole life, and he was really close with his family. And when he was younger, he was like always like close with like his siblings, and he would like always spend time with them. I think like the biggest lesson he learned was that together we create force. Well, like he learned this by the time his mom died, and for when this happened, he his family and himself got really close, and his siblings will always support him because he was really close with his mom, and he always like took care of her when she was like really sick and she couldn't move, as well as my mom. Like she helped my grandma like take care of herself. Another lesson that he learned is that always live for the moment, because you never know when other people are gonna like not gonna be there anymore, and you should always enjoy other people's company as much as you can. Yeah. So during the interview, like it gave me like a big reality check, because I was like never really close with my parents, or like I never like asked them about like their background at all. So when he was talking about his family, like his tone changed, and he was really happy when he was talking about his family, even though they live in like separate countries. It made him like feel, I guess, like really happy, and that made me realize that I should like be more closer with my parents, because I will never know when they're not going to be here for me anymore, and I will try to enjoy their company, and I try that ever since the interview, because they've been through really hard.
My name's Alan. I interviewed my mother, Yesenia, on what her biggest life lesson was, and she told me that she realized this due to an event that happened to her when she was about my age. When her and her family were traveling to Mexico, it happened to snow a lot while they were traveling, and the roads did become icy, and while driving, the driver must have swerved or something to avoid something, and this happened to make the truck roll over about 7 times, and it was kind of in the middle of nowhere, so it was pretty scary for them, I would bet. And everyone came out fine. The only person that was really hurt kind of was our grandpa. His collarbone was broken during the accident. However, in search for everyone, like, because they did fly out a bit out of the truck, they found my mother under the concave truck, like barely in a position where she barely just managed not to get crushed by it fully. And after going to the hospital and having everything sorted out, she realized that she took severe damage to her legs and hip bones. So her biggest life lesson that she learned from this was live every day of your life as if it was your last. Value everything and everyone for what it is, and just plainly and just put your full effort into everything you do within every day of your life.
Hi, my name's Mantha, and today I wanted to talk about my dad. His name is Nestor. He was born in Mexico, Puerto Vallarta, and he works in a bakery because when he was younger, he really loved to bake and do bread. So he works in a restaurant baking. I interviewed him recently, and one of my questions that I was really curious about was what was his big life lesson and how did he learn it? And he told me that his biggest life lesson was family values. I asked him why he had told me that, and he said that because when he was younger, he had a little necklace that his mom had given him, and it was made out of gold, and she had a bunch of other ones selling them. So one day he went to the store because in Mexico, they always send the kids to the store because they're really close. So when he was paying, a guy came up to him, and he's like, "I like your necklace. Where did you get it from?" And he told him that his mom had given it to him, and he said that he would pay him for it. So my dad, he was young, so he's like, okay, he thought it was a good deal to buy candies. So he gave him the necklace, and the guy told him, okay, don't tell your mom that we made this deal. And my dad's like, it's okay, she has more in the house. So he's like, really? And my dad's like, yeah. So the guy's like, okay, can you go get me some more and I'll pay you more money for them? So my dad thought it was fine to just go and get some since she had a lot. So he went to go get like 10 more, and he gave them to the guy. So he kept seeing his mom for the past weeks, like going crazy, trying to find something, but he didn't know what she was looking for. And she never had asked him for anything. So one day, one of his aunties told his mom that they saw him with money, and they thought it was weird because they were like really poor and they didn't have almost enough for rent. So she took him into this room and she gave him a little talk, and he said that he was scared because he thought that she was gonna hit him, but she just talked to him and she's like, I think that now you're in the age for me to tell you things and that you would understand instead of me hitting you, because I feel like now you can understand better. And she told him that those necklaces weren't hers, that she was selling them, and now she had to pay them all, and that she wasn't mad at him, but she wanted him to understand. And he said that in that moment when she told him, something hit him hard, like a painful emotion, and he realized that the only people who are always going to be there for you is your family, and who will always support you, trying to give you what you need and working hard for you to have a better future. And I agree with him, because I started thinking of my friends who come and go, and my brothers and siblings who are always there for me no matter what. And I'm really proud to have a father like that.
I interviewed my father, Anthony Engelman. He's a hospice nurse. And the biggest lesson he learned in life was to be honest. And in his job, honesty is very important because he's dealing with people that are probably gonna die. So he has to let family members know what's going on. He has to tell the patient if they're gonna die soon. That's very hard on people. And, but yeah, it brings me back to what he learned was honesty, and to be honest with yourself and others will bring you far, but being dishonest with yourself and others will bring you absolutely nowhere.
My name is Mariah, and I'm going to be talking about my grandmother. My whole life, she pretty much raised me. I lived at her house most of the time. And 2 years before I was born, her husband died. And he died in a car accident. And he was a super heavy drinker. And he drank a lot. And my grandma didn't really like it, but she stayed with him so that my mom and her aunt and my aunt would have a father, because she didn't want her kids to grow up without a father. So she stayed married to him. And after he died, she told me that she wishes she would have left the relationship a long time ago, because she realized that she would have rather lived her life happy and wanted to provide for her kids by herself and have them both grow up happy, rather than grow up with a father that was drinking that made her unhappy. So the biggest life lesson was that she wishes she would have put her happiness before just staying with someone to make everyone else happy.
Hello, my name is Gabriel Arcon, and today I'm talking about my dad, Gabriel Alarcón Dominguez. He is currently 44 years old. He has 3 kids, Victoria, Emiliano, and me, Gabriel Alarcón. He's married to Alejandra Alarcón. They met in Chihuahua, Mexico, when he was probably 22, entering la Universidad y el Tecnológico de Chihuahua. And his story is really very important to me, and I think it's something I should take in for my life, and just to even tell friends and other people who I care about. Just sometimes tell them, oh, this is really important. I feel like you should take this advice, and it's just really good, a really good story that I want to share with you guys. So it basically starts off with him being and coming from, not coming from Mexico. He's in Mexico. He is probably 17 or 18 years old, and he went out with some friends in the night, and they got really drunk, and he drank a few beers, and he didn't feel too good, and it was probably his first time drinking, like a lot, and he didn't feel too good. He got home, some friends dropped him off, and it got really late, and he got off the car, and his dad opened the door, and he called his grandpa because his dad left him when he was young, and I just wanted to, that's something important. And they opened the door, and his grandpa walked in all drunk, and my grandpa said, hey, is this really what you want for yourself and for your life? And my dad didn't know really what to answer and how he was feeling. He didn't know what to say, and my grandpa said, please wake up in the morning, I have to take you somewhere. My dad went to sleep that night. He didn't feel too good. He threw up a few times. He was feeling nauseous, headaches, and just like in the worst stage. In the morning, he woke up. My grandpa woke him up at 5, and he took him to a rancho or a granja that they had in Mexico, and he told him, all right, so what we're gonna do today, you're gonna dig this hole for me. And my dad's like, how come? And he's like, just dig the hole for me, please, no questions. And my dad started digging the hole. It had to be a really deep hole, and my dad felt, of course, like he wouldn't feel too good that day, that next day, because he had gotten drunk the night before. He felt super bad. He said he was shaking, he couldn't breathe too well, because it was the first time he wasn't used to it. So he started digging the hole, and once he finished, at like in the afternoon, my grandpa said, is this what you want for yourself? And my dad was like, no, I don't think so. And my grandpa said, anything you do for yourself is either in benefit or against your own will. And that to him meant, well, basically saying that if you drink and you go out with those people who are bad influence for you, and you get drunk and you make bad decisions, all that's gonna go either in benefit or against yourself. And drinking that night was against himself, obviously, and it was the worst decision he probably made, just because he never had done that. And my grandpa said right after that, please put the dirt back in the hole, so dig it back up. And my dad started putting the dirt back in, and he still, at the same time, again, he felt really bad. And that's just his lesson, that overall, anything you do for yourself by the influence of others or anything really is going to be against or benefit of your own self. Thank you.
Okay. So my dad's name is Michael Scott Smith. It's an interesting name, right? So my dad, he is a homeowners association manager, and what that means is that he, when people have problems, like their water heater is broken or something's wrong with their electricity, they call him in the areas that he manages in town, and he calls people to come fix their problems. And yeah, so my dad has 3 children, 2 others besides me. And he's married to my mom, and her name's Iba Fukuda. So my dad did not have the best childhood ever. His mom was never really present in his life. I mean, she was there, but was kind of like not in her right mind. So she's bipolar and she gets depressed really easily. And so my dad had to deal with that growing up. And so my grandma, since she was like kind of unstable, they would move around a lot. And so it wasn't uncommon for him to go to 2 schools within a year. And when my dad was in 2nd grade, he had to live with his grandparents because my grandma was so unstable that she couldn't take care of him. But after that, he moved back with her, and she had found another guy to be with, which is my uncle's dad. And let's just say my grandma doesn't have the best taste in men, because Randy, which is my uncle's dad, he abused my grandma a lot of the times, and sometimes he would send her to the hospital, and I guess you can probably guess who was the one who had to drive her to the hospital. Yeah, and it's just all of that like negative energy had like an impact on my dad. And when my dad was growing up with my uncle is 10 years younger than my dad. And so there's a large gap in between them. And so basically, my dad had to take care and raise my uncle, which was undoubtedly hard on him. And it was interesting, and he had to express love towards my uncle when he wasn't really given love from my grandma or my grandpa. Yeah, and so my dad said that his most important lesson in life that he's learned and is still learning is that love heals all wounds. And because babies need to be loved and touched and felt in order to like grow up properly. And people need love to be understood and to figure out their problems, and without love then there's no hope. But if you love the people that you like the least, then there's hope for the world.
I interviewed my sister, Mariela Morales. She's 21. She's the oldest out of 4 siblings. She goes to UNM. She's a junior in college. She studies, she's studying to be a lawyer. And these are some questions I asked her. Who was the most important person in her life? And she answered with our mom. She said she was an inspiration. She was an idol for her. That she looked up to her. That's who she wants to be when she grows up. And that's who she thinks is important to her. And then I asked her what she regrets in life. And she regrets getting a scholarship and not going out of state because she was afraid. She was scared to be alone, so she stayed in state, and that's what she regrets. And I asked her what she looks up in the future, and she doesn't know what the future holds, but she just wants to be successful and wealthy. And the last question I asked her was, what's the biggest lesson you've learned in life? And she answered with, you just have to work hard for what you want and strive for greatness.
My mother's biggest regret in her life was not making good decisions. She grew up in a hard life. When growing up, she was badly abused by her mother. She was not able to make her own decisions because all her decisions were made for her. Growing up that way, it can be hard, and she wasn't able to learn to think for herself or be someone that she wanted to be. The three biggest mistakes that she deeply regrets are the ones that affected her life tremendously. The first mistake that she made was staying with my dad. He's a good guy to the kids, but admittedly, when they first got together, he was very abusive mentally and physically. She decided to stay with him once they had their child. They had their first child at the age of 19, and she felt inclined to stay with him for the support for a child. And she didn't learn from her mother that abuse is awful and that nobody should go through with it. So she didn't understand that it's deeply hurting her in many ways that she didn't know. And she just stayed with him, and she kept staying with him. Yeah, she still regrets that, even though she's still with him. He's less abusive now than he was then, but he still comments things that hurt her. The second biggest mistake that she's ever made was getting epidural, having my younger sister. About 9 years ago, she had my younger sister in the hospital. She was gonna do it naturally by a midwife, but nobody was there to take her to the midwife in Albuquerque, so she was forced to do it at the hospital. She wasn't going to get any drugs to make it easier, but she was in so much pain that she did. The epidural ended up messing with her nerves in her spinal cord, and she developed MS, which still hurts her today. And the third biggest mistake that she made was the one that hurt her the most. It was it was Christmas of 2016, the day after Christmas. Everything went fine. Christmas was great and all, but the day after is what caused all this to happen. That night, she got into a big fight with my dad. There was lots of yelling, and she just got really frustrated. My dad was gonna leave off in his car like he usually does, but she decided to chase after him. He has a truck where he can climb into the back, and when he was not looking, she did. He didn't know she was there, so he drove, and she fell and hit her head. What that did is caused some ligaments in her neck to break or stretch, and that the ligaments are what holds your neck tightly, and now she's in pain mostly. And yeah, she's just made many big mistakes in her life that she regrets, and she tells me every day to think about decisions before I make them and to not act unrationally. So yeah, I learned to think about my decisions and thoroughly plan them out, and to not rush into anything that I'm unsure of or if I'm too emotional. Yeah.
My name is Sotelo. I'll be talking about my mother, Esperanza Marquez, and how she had her hard moments coming to the United States. And one of them was crossing the border and getting caught by Border Patrol and had to say back to Mexico. And the second one was making it here. But her biggest lesson was leaving her family back in Mexico and not knowing if she can go back and come back legally, which she knew it wouldn't ever be possible. And she came here for us, me and my sister, to have a better future and a better education.
So, when I was little, my mom was in an abusive relationship with my father. And one day, after discovering how much this relationship was frightening to me and all my siblings, she took us with her, and we pretty much ran away to Santa Fe, New Mexico, by chance.
And really now, when I look back on it, and from what she's told me through this interview process, really the lesson that I'm picking up from her is that relationships are a very tricky thing. They can be very powerful, or they can be very damaging to a person. And the key to having a healthy, strong relationship is in relying on each other and having a vulnerable sense of openness with one another. You can't be completely and utterly independent without any support when you're in a relationship. You have to find the middle ground where you can lean on each other for support, but not abuse or take over the relationship, so that each person has their own say in what they do, but also as a partnership. And I think that sums it up pretty nicely.
My mom's name is Valerie Gonzalez. She's a teacher, a kindergarten teacher. She was born and raised in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Well, her parents got pregnant at 18, and they had my mom. They got a divorce actually a year later, and my mom was 1 year old. She went with my grandma. She was raised by my grandma until she was 10. She ran away from home to live with my grandpa. My grandpa was then sent to prison when my mom was 15. My mom then had to live without her dad until she was about 27. And when she was 17, she gave birth to her first child, which was my older brother. She gave him up for adoption. I've never met him. My mom has seen her parents make mistakes, and she's made a lot of mistakes herself. And my mom's life lesson was that to never dwell on your mistakes and to try and move on from them. Learn from them, but don't overthink them because they're in the past. And with me, I still need to learn that lesson. I do think about mistakes a lot, but my mom always tells me that it's not important. They're over with. Just learn from them and try to forget.
My name is Joel Puentes, and the person I interviewed was my dad, Armando. The biggest lesson was that he grew up without a father, because it affected him too, because he had to work as a young person. And I am thankful that I had a father, because I have someone to teach me, and he didn't have a father, so they could teach him, and I'm thankful for that.
So I interviewed my grandma, and she is from Chihuahua, Mexico. She is a mother of 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. She is a grandmother of 5 kids, me and 3 and another girl and 2 boys, and then another boy to come. She is a widow also for 4 years, and she was in the hospital for about 2 months this November because she had an abdominal sepsis, and she was in a coma for 2 weeks maybe, and she was totally unconscious. She doesn't remember anything, but when I interviewed, she told me that the biggest lesson she had learned were to value herself, value other people, be humble, and to live life to the fullest. Well, I take my grandma's words to heart because she's kind of my best friend. I tell her everything, and she has just taught me. She's raised me since I was little, and when she says to live life to the fullest, I really believe her, because they didn't know if she was going to survive when she was in the hospital. So she said that she also learned to value herself, because no one's gonna have your back like you have your back. No one knows everything that's going on in your mind. And to also value other people, because you also don't know what's going on in their mind, and you don't know if anyone else is understanding of what they're going through. And to always be humble, because life is just gonna treat you like you treat it, and if you do good to other people, they'll do good to you, and that that miracles sometimes just don't happen, that she doesn't consider herself as a miracle, that she got out of it, that she feels like she got out of that situation because she kept fighting, because doctors didn't think she was gonna survive. So she feels like everything that she went through was her fight, and that makes her like a stronger person, and that the fact that she went through a lot of what my grandpa went through, that also made her want to fight more, because she wanted to see her new grandchild and she wanted to keep seeing all of us. So she just said that it wasn't time to go yet, and she just kept fighting. So she just really inspires me because she's like my best friend, and because she just has gone through so much and she just continues to fight.
The person I interviewed was my father. He has 4 kids and he works at landscaping. And the biggest lesson he learned in his life was that one time they were going to go on a trip out of town, and the car didn't work, so my grandpa fixed it, but they're going to go to the train, and there was a big old car accident which didn't let him pass. So my grandpa decided to go back to the house, and they were pretty mad. Him and my aunties were pretty mad because they didn't get to go. But my grandpa said that when God doesn't want you to do something, he puts obstacles in the way. And later that day, they figured out that the train they were gonna ride flipped over, and a lot of people got hurt. So like the biggest lesson he learned was that when God doesn't want you to do something, he'll put obstacles in the way. And you gotta try to understand that you can't do that, or it wasn't meant for you.
Okay. So the person that I interviewed is my mom. Her name is Marlene Montano. She's 41 years old, and she works for the Department of Health. Before that, she was a preschool teacher at the community college. My mom has 3 children and 2 grandchildren. And the lesson that she learned was to not take people for granted, especially the people that are very close to you and deeply loved. When she says that she learned this, she thinks about my grandpa Joe, who had recently passed away. She says it because when she thinks back to her 20s, she's reminded about the times that he was there for her for the hard times and the financial struggles that he helped her get through that she couldn't have gone through alone. After my grandpa had passed away, before my grandpa had passed away, he suffered from a stroke and got dementia. His 7 daughters took turns taking care of him on the weekends, which was tough because of mood swings and everything dementia comes with. She was there for weekends, and she felt that most of her time was being wasted at the moment. And when he passed away, she realized how much she missed him and how much she took him for granted, and it made her feel really bad. And she misses him a lot. That was the lesson that she learned.
My dad was 20 when he came to the United States. He went back maybe 5 or 6 times. And every day he tells me, my brother and my sister to stay in school and to try our hardest, because our education is the best thing that we can do, and it will help us out the most in life out of everything that we do. And it makes me like want to try harder and harder every day. Yeah, because I want to make my dad proud. I want to take advantage of what he didn't have an opportunity to do. Yeah, that's it.
Alright. So the person I interviewed was my father, Jose Guevara, and he dropped out of high school when he was 15. So yeah. At age 15, he dropped out of school because
he had some friends who influenced him to just go into work because being a teenager, he thought he could do his living by doing construction. But now he's 48, working for Barker Management and making enough money to support a family of 6. He looks up a lot to my sister, to my aunt, Mayra. She graduated high school, went on to college, went to law school, and got a degree to be a lawyer. And she makes a lot of money, and she could get whatever she wants. And she's not only a role model for me, but also for my dad, because it shows him that if he would have stayed in school, he could have had a different future, a less severe one, and also a role model for me to show me what I could become when I'm already an adult. And when I interviewed my dad, he really thought a lot about his life now and his life if he had a better education. And right now he's okay, he's happy with the state he's in because he has a great family. But at times he always wishes that he could have gone back and said, I wish it would have worked, instead of saying, I wish I would have tried. So yeah, so the main lesson that he learned, the main lesson that my dad learned was that just stick through with things and don't just stick with it and don't leave it in the dirt, because all the hard work is going to pay off in the future, and great rewards are going to come from the hard work that you put in. And it's a great lesson that my dad and I always talk about, and it's just something I look up to, not only to him but to my aunt Mariah, because she's cool. I never met her, but I've heard stories from her, and she's a great role model for my dad and for my family.
So today I'm going to talk about my dad and how he pushed through many obstacles to try and reach his goal and succeed in America. And when he was young, he used to be treated really badly, and he wasn't ever taken into consideration of what he wanted or what he wanted to become, because he had to take care of his siblings. There was 7 of them in total, and when he'd go to school, they were so broke that they weren't able to buy themselves a simple orange, and he'd have to watch over at other kids, be able to buy as many treats as they wanted to, and he couldn't really do anything. And my dad always had to herd sheep. He had to take care of the cattle, and he always just had to take care of his family, because my grandpa would always be he wouldn't be home, and he was kind of an alcoholic. So when my dad was older, when he was 13 years old, he did a really bad thing, and my grandpa got really angry at him. But instead of lashing out at him, he told him that he really loved him, and that it hurt him to see him do those actions and just not be able to take the consequences and just keep on doing it and doing it. And so for me, the biggest lesson that I've learned from my dad is to never let anything be unsaid, because in spite of everything that's going on in your life, you always need to know that you're loved and that you're worth it and that you matter. And my dad taught me that sometimes it's better to let people know how you feel and to not keep it to yourself, because in the end it can really hurt others.
So I'm Max Montoya, and my lesson came from my dad. He grew up in San Francisco, California. Born and raised there, and he started life off pretty rough with a father who didn't care. Father who didn't care, abandonment, and then stepdad who was abusive. So when he started school and eventually dropped out, it took him a while to learn, but what he's told me is that to just always live life how you want to live it. Live life honestly and how you want to live it, because society is always changing, and really what he said is it's an ever evolving thing. So why not just why live how society wants you to live, and that, so why not just live how you want to? Always be true to yourself.
Hello, my name is Victoria Larcon Macias, and I interviewed my cousin. She explained to me that she has a lot of memories and a lot of things she's learned through her years. And one thing she told me was that one thing that basically touched her deeply is just like treat everyone the way you will want to be treated, and just she explained to me a story she had was that she would work at this restaurant, and she would see someone come in, and she would always be like, hey, how are you, and always be so nice to him. And one day she finally sat with him and started talking to him and about his life, and they had an amazing time just talking about each other's lives. And then soon she moved to a different place to work, and then she didn't see that guy anymore. So soon one day he appeared at the restaurant, and she saw him, and she was really excited to see him. And again, so he was like, hey, how are you? And he was just like ignored her, like just like, oh, she's being nice to me, And then she just kept being nice to him continuously. And one day she came up to him and was like, hey, do you remember me? Like, we talked at my old restaurant, like, how have you been? And he was like, oh, that's where I remember you from. And they started talking again, and he was like, sorry for being so rude. I've had a rough past, and don't take it personally because I have memory loss, and it's just so nice that you keep being so nice to me because that means you care about me. So that's one example she gave me out of many of just being nice to each other. And it's something we hear every day from people, just to be nice to one another. And it's true. If you want to be nice, you'll get received nice.
My name is Cruz Sotelo. I interviewed my brother, Edgar. And the life lesson he learned was that there is second chances. He learned this by the hard way, by a tragedy. He went out a night for a couple drinks. He went out for a pack of cigarettes to the gas station. And on his way back, he lost control of the car and he flipped over 8 times. And I learned from this by not going down to dark places, to substance abuse, and just not doing bad choices, to always think about my actions. And I think it's really led me to the person I am today. And I've seen a change in him. He's been more responsible. He just doesn't do much of that stuff anymore, or much of those things. That's it.
The person I decided to interview was my mom, Dora Marquez Aviña. My mom was born in Amiquipa, Chihuahua, and grew up there alongside her 11 brothers and sisters in a 4-bedroom home. My mom went through many lessons in her life, including losing her parents at a very young age and having to help and raise her 11 brothers and sisters. They were all successful, and they have all grown and matured and have their own families. My mom then met my father in Amiquipa, Chihuahua, Efrain Enriquez. They then moved to Juarez, Chihuahua, and they started their own family. My mom got pregnant with my sister, and they ended up moving to Santa Fe, New Mexico. Here in Santa Fe, my mom had my sister Janet and my brother Juan Carlos. My mom then got deported to Mexico for 10 years. My mom was in Mexico, and my father and my 2 siblings would come to Mexico every weekend to visit us, doing a 5-hour drive every weekend. My mom then had me and my sister Lisette in Juarez, Mexico, and so we are both citizens from the United States and Mexico. My mom then got a phone call stating that my dad got a heart attack. And so my mom was granted the permission to come to the United States to see my father just in case he was to die. My mom brought me and my sister here, and my aunties and uncles took care of us while she stayed 24 hours a day in the hospital with my father. My father was then cleared from the hospital and he was able to go home. In Santa Fe, we then began our lives, and me and my sister began to go to school here in Santa Fe. We then matured and learned English as a second language and did exceptionally well in school. Our whole family has been successful, and my mom went through a lot of hardships, including the fact that she stayed here illegally for a couple years until then she was able to gain her citizenship, and now my whole family is legally here in the United States and we are doing very well. Through all these lessons, my mom's biggest lesson was family and the unity of family. She saw the effects firsthand when her parents died and she had to take care of her siblings. She saw them also when she was separated from her 2 children in the United States and they grew up without a mom. She saw the effects that had on my 2 siblings and how they grew distant from my mom, and how my dad was always at work to try to support, so my older siblings grew up without a very big support system. We gained our family's strengths back, and we were able to become one, and now we are as unified as we can be. And so my mom has learned very many lessons, but throughout all this, she believes family is the best.
My name is Drew Tapia, and I interviewed my father, David Tapia. When he was a young boy, around my age, he wasn't himself. He used to act like what he thought was cool, what everyone else thought was cool. He wasn't true to him. He was true to everyone else. And that really hurt him in a few ways, such as he used to ditch school, and it really hurt his grades. He didn't make the friends that he wanted, and he didn't make the best decisions. And at a point, he just stopped going to school. And after that, he got kicked out of school, and he had to get his GED. And after that, he started to work at the city of Santa Fe. And a little bit later down the road, that's when he met my mom. And everything after that point went so well for him, because he knew that the path that he was led down was still a great path, but he just wished that he could do his best in school and he could change that somehow. And through his life, he really has formed himself, and right now he's true to himself, purely. And his biggest lesson for everyone was to know that always be yourself and never be anyone else other than yourself. Because when you are yourself, everyone around you will know and treat you like you should be.
So for my interview, I interviewed my mom, and so she was a very troubled child, and she didn't care about school, and she just went off and did her own things. And then she had me when she was a senior in high school, and that totally changed her life because she wasn't used to taking care of anybody except for herself. And so it changed her, and she stayed at home for like a year and took care of me. And so the biggest lesson she learned was that take time for yourself because you'll never get that time back.
Hi, my name's Brian, and I interviewed my father, Reyes, and he told me a lot of stories from how he moved from Mexico, Zacatecas, to Santa Fe, New Mexico, from when he was about 14 of age or younger. I don't quite remember. But he said that it was a big experience for him because he had to go from wearing boots to wearing shoes, and he had to go from working in like little convenience stores because he's used to being able to work in farms and fields from how he lived his life in Mexico. But what I really want to talk to you guys about is his biggest lesson in life, which in his words was growing up too young. Growing up too young in his point of view was moving out of his own house at the age of 16. He met my mom at the age of 15 and a half, somewhere there. And I forgot what school it was, but it was in a middle school. After that, they just kept going out over and over. By the time he was 17, my mom was already pregnant. And after that, he had to get himself a real job. And he had to quit everything he had before to be able to provide money for my mother's care insurance and stuff. And after that, his biggest lesson was growing up too fast. Getting a real job, getting my mom pregnant, having his first kid before the age of 21. And it was really hard for him at first, but then he never decided to quit. He wasn't like other people that I know, that they get their girlfriends pregnant and they left and they leave. My father was never like that. He was always an incorrigible man. He has a lot of weaknesses, but at the same time, he has a lot of strength, capacity. Or like, for example, like he would get hurt, but he'll just keep moving on. He'll never quit. And I just love my father for the way he is, for the way how he's treated us, and how he's been able to raise us as a big family. And he's never been a quitter, and I always look up to him.
Lo que vengo a hablar es sobre la historia de mi mamá. Se llama Mariana Rivera García. Nació en la ciudad de Chihuahua, Guerrero. Fue criada en Guerrero. A los 17 años o 18 tiene una hermana llamada Georgina Rivera. Then, se vinieron a vivir a Estados Unidos. Aquí formaron sus familias. Mi mamá se casó con mi papá, Ismael Flores García. Después, en unos pocos años me tuvieron a mí, soy su primera hija. Después a un año 7 meses nació mi hermana, Melissa García Rivera. Pues pasé mi vida a los 6 años aquí, junto con mi mamá y mi papá. Después ellos se separaron. De ahí nos fuimos a vivir a México, con quien mi mamá se juntó con su esposo, con Uriel, en el que es mi padrastro. Entonces, ahora estamos de vuelta aquí con mi mamá y pues le agradezco todo por lo que me ha hecho y creo que es una de las mejores que me puede haber dado.
I interviewed my mom, and her biggest event in life was coming to the United States, and she had to live with my auntie, and because she was trying to find a job and so she could get money and buy herself a home. And her biggest struggle was to speak English. And now she's going to classes she speaks better English now, and she has 3 kids. One is 24, and me and my brother. And yeah.
I interviewed my auntie. She is a very person close to my heart. She is from Mexico, and she has her own business now, which is going pretty good. When she was about 20 something years old, she got pregnant and she was married, and her husband was very mean to her. She went through domestic abuse, and one of her biggest lessons was that when love isn't being served no longer, you should learn how to stand up from the table. And this makes me realize how no one should ever go through such things as that, and you shouldn't get treated like that.
Hi, my name is Fidel Valladares, and I interviewed my mom, and her biggest lesson that she learned was to um to to take the opportunities that you want to do, and if you don't, she said that you're losing a great opportunity. And she learned this by when she came to United States. She said that she missed a lot of opportunities that she would have wanted to do. She wanted to study to be a cook, but she couldn't because she was too shy to go to take the classes, and so she said that she regrets it. But now she's happy though that she has a family over here. Yeah.
Okay, my name is Katie, and the person I interviewed was my dad. And he went through many obstacles coming to the United States, and he went through a lot to be here and create what he has now, a beautiful family and a company of his own, being undocumented and coming from nothing to almost getting there to everything. My dad came to the United States about 7 to 8 times, and throughout those times he was young. He came when he was around 14 was the first age, and then the very last time was when he was 22, and the very last time was with my sister being born and with my mom. When my dad first came, he didn't have anything. He just came with a backpack and his siblings, 2 of his older brothers. And they didn't know what to look for or to do because they didn't have anyone or anything. And they were like, what are we doing here? Are we gonna be able to survive, or are we able to do something out of nothing? And so they decided to go back. And each time he went back to the United States, when he crossed the border, each time there was a different story, and they all match up to the life lesson he learned. The very last time my dad crossed was actually before that. They were already here building a new future. And so my family has, not only my family, but it's like a Mexican tradition to celebrate the little ones 3 years of age, and it's like a big party and a celebration. And mostly all his family and my mom's family was in Mexico, so they decided to cross the border from the United States to Mexico and have the big party over there. And when that happened, they wanted to come back because they already had their life here. With that story, it was kind of tough because it was like a lot of ruckus, and in that time they were being strict about who was coming into the United States and who wasn't. And obviously my parents couldn't go through that easily because my dad, my mom, and my sister were born and raised in Mexico, so they didn't have passports or papers or any of that. So it was kind of tough. When they crossed the border, my sister was really young. She was obviously her 3 years of age. And when they crossed, they got caught, but they didn't end up going. They didn't return back to Mexico because my mom didn't allow it. And that time my dad was really just overblown of thoughts that they were gonna get caught and that they were gonna go back, and all of what they had created or like built up in the United States was gonna just fall down. And it was just gonna be bad and just crash. And my mom was decided to not let that happen. Overall, it was just a tough life for my dad, and he is really happy for what he has like come to, and overall his overall lesson was to be a good person and like to always be humble and to treat others the way you want to be treated. And if you end up being a good person and end up giving and helping and putting other people in front of you than yourself is sometimes very good, and that helps you in many situations, as how it helped my dad and family. So it all came down to now him being with my family and having what we have now, because if it weren't to be for my father, we wouldn't have had this life. Stop.
Today I'm going to be talking about my dad and how he got my mom pregnant at 17 and how that taught me about having to take responsibility in your own life. So he was in high school and it was just kind of out of nowhere, and he was working to be a firefighter for a little while, and then he got offered a job at Discount Tire where he works now. And I guess it worked out for the better because he's making a lot more money. But he had to choose between a higher paying job or his dream job. And since I was on the way, he had to go with Discount Tire and give up his thing about being a firefighter. Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do, I guess. And just for the greater good and the overall of everything. And I guess he was more thinking about my entire life instead of his whenever that happened. That means a lot to me.
Hi, my name is Jackie. I interviewed my dad. When he was 14, he went to live with my auntie to Baja California. And when he turned 15, he decided to cross the border. He crossed the border many times. When he first got here to the United States, he asked one of my uncles if he could stay with him and his family, but they told him he couldn't stay with them, but they told him he could stay in the stables where the food of the horses were, where he spent many cold nights and when him getting wet by the rain. After that, my dad spent many nights in the cold, but his biggest lesson was that he didn't ever think that his family was capable of doing that to him, but from the last person he expected to get help from was the one to help him to have a home, water and food and clothes, and not having to be in the cold every night. And that's his biggest lesson, that family isn't always gonna be what you think.
So I interviewed my mom for my oral history, and just the biggest lesson she learned in life was that life is really short and that you live it to your fullest, and she learned that lesson because her mom, my grandmother, died of liver cancer at 56, so she's living her life as much as she can before anything that drastic happens. Okay, so that affects me as a person because I never really knew my grandmother because I was 9 months when she passed away, and I heard she was really passionate and loving person for my older sister. She loved collecting pens. She loved pens. Yeah, it was a really good thing to hear that she was a good person, and that, yeah, it was really sad that I didn't get to know her.
For my oral history project, I interviewed my dad. The reason I interviewed my dad is he's been a big influence on my life, like as far as I can remember. Like, he's the one who taught me how to climb. He pushed me past my limits. But yeah. So when he was 19, he moved to America. He moved to Houston, Texas, because where he was at then, he was at a tech college. He didn't like that so much. He wanted a physical education degree. So he moved to Houston. He had no family. He only had one aunt who he met once. So he took the risk, and he got his associate's degree, and now he owns the rock climbing gym here in Santa Fe. So I think that the biggest lesson he learned was, even if life throws super scary things at you, I don't know, you might have to move to a new school or move into a different place. He moved all the way from the Netherlands to America at age 19. So his biggest lesson was, no matter what, if you think the risk is going to be a high payoff, take the risk.
I recently asked my stepmother, Brittany, who works at Lionel, to tell me what was the biggest life lesson she learned. And she told me on a couch in the office the story of what she learned. And that was one time when she met my father. They went into the ski basin and they went on a bike ride, and my dad brought tea, and I don't know what tea it was, but from what she described it, I want that tea as well. But they were on the bike ride and they stopped in a meadow, and my dad poured them some tea, and as she drank it, she realized that she wasn't happy with her current life and she wanted something different. And so she savored the tea and went home and slept on it, and discovered that she was missing something that was lost and found, and that was being happy, and how happiness is one of the most important things you can do for yourself. And she passed it on to me, and I think that is one of the most important things you can learn as a human being, is to be happy, because without that you're not going to get far, without your own mental conscious peace. So it means a lot to me that she passed it on to me.